Hello and welcome to Insight Live, the IT Experts Take. I'm Jason Rader and I will be your host today as we dive into cloud smart strategies for multi-cloud with our special guest VMware. With me today from Insight, we have Pat Teal, who's a Principal Consulting Services Architect for VCP. Welcome, Pat.
Welcome. Thank you.
And we have Sean Dellinger, who's a Partner Solution Architect from VMware. Welcome, Sean. We're glad to have you.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here.
So to get things kicked off, I mean, I love the topic that we're going through. We actually threw out a question, as I think you guys know, to the folks out there, asking what topic related to multi-cloud strategies is your org most interested in? And the options were security and ransomware, limiting cloud costs, managed cloud services, and tech debt in the cloud. And which do you guys think was the hot topic there?
I always think it's cost. I talked to a lot of executives, and it seems I think the survey, I hope, said the same thing, is talking about costs and managing it and being able to really understand how to move from a on-site data center or their SDDC on site or in a private cloud or in a colo to moving towards a cloud development and managing those costs. So,
any guesses for you, Sean, or you agree with that one?
I would agree with that one. I find it bad practice to argue with Pat. So, yeah. I think the tech debt, I hear a lot about tech debt because that's kind of aligned with like FinOps, people wanting to manage costs.
Which
and
is
I think
cost.
I think the two subjects are very closely aligned, but I would also agree with Pat's guess. I didn't see the survey. So what did our audience answer?
Well, you guys got it, cost, which I think obviously from the maturation of, I think, where people are, and especially when we're talking about multi-cloud, I think cost is something that's on folks' mind. FinOps is something we've definitely had sessions on before. The tech debt was, so we had 43% on the cloud, limiting cloud costs. We had 29% on managed cloud services. So I think there's kind of a appetite for some help. And then the security and the tech debt both respectively were 14%, which that doesn't mean nobody cares. It just means that cost and figuring this out and how we operationalize it, I think are top of mind for most folks. Wow. And, you know, we kind of toyed around with the cloud chaos to, you know, cloud smart transition. And this wasn't to say that our viewers are in chaos. Sometimes they might feel that way, but what's some of the chaos that we're seeing out there from both of your perspectives? Sean, why don't you go first?
Well, I think there's just a lack of clarity. Like there are so many options to go, you know, quote unquote, to the cloud. You know, any X as a service, usually consumed as a subscription, creates another option, something more for customers to track and manage. It could be a different skill set they need to learn in order to be successful. And how do you measure success? I mean, even that as a baseline, you as a consumer of technology, as a business or an enterprise, how do you measure whether or not you're successful? So what I say, you know, the imperial what we've seen is that when customers dip their toes in going to the cloud, there's just so many options, and that's why it's chaotic.
And I would agree with Sean on that. I think that a lot of times when I'm talking to people and listening to their journey, it's on the top of the mind for most executives and C-suite people. They're looking at ways to be able to maintain costs because when you're in a data center, it's more of a CapEx model, and moving to the cloud is shifting it more to an OpEx model, so they have predictable billing. However, is that a lot of times once they move to the cloud, they find that billing is way all over the board, and managing it and understanding exactly where is the best place to be put in the cloud and how can they maximize that investment, because they're shifting a lot of those costs that they had in their data center out into a different environment. And I think a lot of times it's an education to be able to talk to the executives and understand the cost, because it's not always cheaper, because a lot of the costs are buried in your in-house data centers, and people don't understand that. And I always look at being in the cloud as being, you're just creating another data center. It's basically, you're creating an entire data center. It's just in a different location. And so a lot of those costs that you may not recognize, whether it be power or cooling or whatever it might be, that you don't always take in consideration, those all have to be kind of upfront. But the great part about it is now you can actually know what your cost is and you can actually budget for it. Usually the CFOs love going to the cloud because it's predictable for them.
No, I totally agree. I was going to say the exact same thing, is that, and I love what you said, Sean, the measure. I think that, how do you know if you're in chaos? Because I think, as a security person, sometimes I'm like, oh no, this isn't chaos. This is what we expect. But you've got to measure these things. You got to understand them. So it may be that your chaos isn't chaos, but you don't have the appropriate measurements in place to be able to convey that back to leadership. And I think that's probably one of the biggest conversations I find myself being in, is explaining that, that all-in cost of something from a business perspective, and showing the value of it is something that, technical people aren't necessarily disciplined in from the get-go. It's something that we have to get better at, because it's really all about the business.
Yeah. And when we talk about chaos, from a management perspective, from the IT folks that I work with, they're sometimes frustrated as well, because most of the clouds have different ways of managing it. Azure has its own platform. AWS has its own management platforms. The thing I love about VMware is that they're now talking about trying to address that and trying to reduce that complexity and that chaos of having to have multiple tools to be able to manage these environments and be able to have the capability of managing the workloads, move it from one location to another seamlessly, because sometimes an application may be better suited in one particular cloud. And almost 90% of the executives I've talked to have all said that their strategy is not on a single cloud, but in a multiple cloud. So they have to figure out a way to be able to overcome this and be able to have that ability to migrate and be able to move workloads where they need to be. It might be a retail operation or a retail application that might be better suited in AWS, as an example, or it might be something that needs more of a AI type environment. Maybe Azure might be a better location for. There's multiple reasons for every application, and all the cloud services have their own tools. And how do we incorporate those tools to help drive business outcomes for our customers as well? So those are all factors, and that adds to that chaos that we talk about so often. And how do we take it from chaos to being cloud smart and be able to really help our customers understand and be able to manage and navigate through that cloud experience?
And you touched on VMware tools at the beginning of your previous statement. So why don't we, since VMware is our special guest, why don't we give Sean an opportunity to talk about a couple of the tools? And I know this sounds like shameless self-promotion, but we asked you the question.
Well, without, getting down to the individual solution level it's very, very tempting. But I think that the benefit of a VMware strategy towards multi-cloud is that, cloud smart is a little bit of a marketing term, admittedly, right? But we're describing a journey. And the reason it's a valid descriptor is because it describes the journey to a destination of doing something better at the end of the journey than you did at the beginning. And the reason why I think VMware's multi-cloud strategy is resonating in the marketplace generally is that we have our offering, which is VMware Cloud on AWS. But the customer demand is such that now there are VMware infrastructure offerings that aren't ours, offered by Microsoft and offered by Google and offered by Oracle and Alibaba and IBM. I believe Insight may have an infrastructure as a service offering based on VMware. So the benefit is that we have tools that make the cloud behave like your on-prem data center. We just had our 25th anniversary. I think VMware is about as old as Insight as a company. So over the years, customers have built up a stable of VMware specific skills on how to provision, how to manage, how to automate, how to monitor. That's what they do on-prem. But if you're consuming or subscribing, because they're all as a service, as we talked about, a VMware as a service offering from Microsoft or one of the other hyperscalers that I mentioned, it's the same skill set. So going to a multi-cloud strategy, sure, you can consume the native services, which are fantastic, right? They all have their really powerful solutions that are native to the hyperscalers. But if you're consuming one of the VMware solutions, those are adjacent. So there's a lot of advantages about, number one, getting there quickly. Number one, using the same skills that your staff already has to manage a VMware-based solution, but then take advantage of the power that each of the hyperscalers bring to bear through their native solutions. So that's a mouthful answer to a short question, but I hope I did answer it.
I think you did a great job, Sean. And I think that, just one thing that I would point out is the world of IT is changing dramatically in the last couple of years with the introduction of things like AI and generative AI and containers and Kubernetes and all the other things that are going on in the industry today. We as IT professionals need to really kind of keep that education going. And where I'm going with that is the education is so important. And one of the things that I give credit to VMware as an example is that they are actually embracing a lot of these open technologies and finding ways to be able to help manage them better through the environment. And a lot of this is really important for our customers to reduce that chaos and make it actually being smart in the cloud. I keep referring back to that cloud chaos to cloud smart, which I kind of like that terminology. I use that a lot when I'm talking to customers, just to help them kind of navigate through that process. And I just feel that there's so much to learn today. I'm constantly hearing new things almost every day today that it's accelerating so quickly that we all have to just stay so sharp, and we have to start looking at a different skill set, yet still managing with an environment to secure it for safety. Ransomware is rampant. Just everything is. I know Jason is real into the security side of it, so I'd love to hear his side of how to secure that cloud in an easy way, if there is such a word as easy. Immutable copies, protecting data, having multiple versions. It's complex, and I give credit to all the IT professionals out there to really help them grow their experience or skill set. I sometimes refer to it as your stock value to your company, to yourself. Is what is your stock? What do you bring as a value to your company? So I'll pass it back to Jason. Give us some ideas on security and safety and how to protect us.
Well, I wanted to and thank you. You should be the host of the show, actually. So when we're talking about that chaos to cloud smart, we're going to keep using that because I think it's, I talked earlier, we talked about measurements and being able, the predictability of certain aspects is how you go from chaos to smart. I love the standard set of tools. Like you said, there are native tools that exist on all the platforms. But from a security perspective, one of the biggest things that we see is that having a whole bunch of different tools to configure things makes things more complex. And therefore, that makes things less secure usually, because having things set, the tools are capable native on the platforms, but they're definitely different. I mean, the paradigms are even different between the hyperscalers. So you've got to have a whole bunch of different expertise, as well as having expertise in VMware, because that's typically an integral part of most enterprise organizations to begin with. So it is one of those things where I think a common set of tools across the platforms is definitely, from a security perspective alone, just being involved in that makes things inherently more secure. Besides the capabilities that VMware is known for, having those capabilities at the hypervisor level, from a carbon black perspective, having the ability to do snaps and restore from those far quicker than most of the other solutions that are out there. I mean, those are the things that I think of that have saved a lot of folks bacon, depending on what particular situation that they've been in. But again, I don't want to steer too far away from just the fact that having that common set of tools is a really important part of going from chaos to the smart, cloud smart. Yeah, any comments on that, Sean?
Well, I think cloud is a journey, not a destination. And because I have two logos on my shirt, right? I think the smartest thing a customer can do is, wherever they are in that journey, find a trusted advisor, whether that's a VMware. I I would venture to guess that having a solution integrator of the size, complexity, expertise of Insight come in and help do an evaluation or an assessment to determine where you are in that journey, but more importantly, map out how to get where you want to be. I've heard some amazing stories that, our audience, ask your Insight reps about it. If you have an Insight rep, if you don't, then you should get one. Assessments, do a gap analysis, like how to get, number one, what are you trying to accomplish? Because I think we hit on it earlier, but what is cloud chaos? And I think I remember in the quote unquote early days. I mean, I've got gray hair here, not here, but in the early days, go cloud. Like that would be a goal. Just go to the cloud. Well, why? Really? And I think having a trusted advisor that is agnostic across hyperscalers, across vendors, like an Insight, is a really smart decision that any customer can make to help do that gap analysis. So I know you directed it to me, but I'm turning it right back around and saying, I know for a fact, because I work with Insight professionals every day, how amazing your company is at providing that trusted advice to customers of all sizes.
And I really appreciate that. I think, it is one of those things, as you're certainly an integral partner to what we do. One of the benefits that we have with the 3,800 architects and engineers that we've got is that breadth of knowledge across all of the hypervisors, across all of the solutions, because it's typically not a vanilla solution that's going to happen in any situation, and figuring out where those complements are and what's right. And it's almost always bespoke for every client. And that's the problem is by the time a client does the bake-offs, figures out all the things they need and does all that stuff, they get to monetize it if they do it properly once, where Insight, we get to monetize it over and over and over again, which is why we've got such an investment there. And that alone changes a lot of chaos, because just those bake-offs, I mean, I've done it myself in my career. I've been doing this for a long time. That is exhausting, right? You have to get through all of the different things, do the proof of concepts, all of those things to figure out where you're going. Well, you can jump way ahead of that line when you get somebody who's got that kind of expertise to leverage at will, like Insight. So go ahead, Pat. I know you.
Yeah, I was going to say, one of the biggest things, and I refer to one of my favorite candies is M&Ms, is migrate and modernize. A lot of times that we try to help drive direction and provide some guidance to our customers, and using the VMware platform. They've got a VMware platform in all three of the major clouds, and Oracle and IBM as well. There's all different options out there, but being able to use those standardized set of tools. But moving to the cloud isn't as simple as just a lot of CIOs and people say just move to the cloud. But there's a lot more thought that needs to be done between that going to the cloud. Why are you moving to the cloud? What native services are you looking for? I talked a little bit earlier about, moving applications closer to the tools that are better and benefit and help drive more profitability for your company. The bottom line is they need to drive revenue for their shareholders and for their company owners. So we need to make sure that not only just moving to the cloud and having chaos around it, but do intelligent decisions, moving to what cloud is going to benefit them the most. And, being able to align those native cloud services, being able to look at it. And I often tell people, I say, if they want to move into the cloud quickly, using the VMware solutions is by far same tools, same usage. Your team doesn't have to be trained up on new tools. They can use some of the same security that they're used to doing. And believe it or not, it's actually sometimes more cost effective to go that route than to go to the straight native, especially depending on the size, because of the way you have to t-shirt sizes and other items. And I've done a number of presentations on that and webinars about it. So, but the whole concept is that we need to be smart. And that's where we always talk about is that rely on Insight, rely on the people out here. We've got a tremendous skill set of some really smart guys that I rely on to help educate our customers and make sure that we're doing the right thing for our customers. So I'll hand it back to you guys.
No, I appreciate that. I think it all boils down from a financial perspective, again, we're helping people deliver business objectives with what we're trying to do. All of this needs to support that. I think when, another discipline, and this isn't super techy, but it's something that I think is important. Another discipline we've got to get kind of used to is it's not this one for one. I'm going to take out this, I'm going to put in this. We've got to look at how that investment works over time. And I think, that kind of is that journey that I think both of you kind of alluded to. That's an important aspect, because you can't just do it kind of like the old IT budgeting. We're like, we're going to do this for $50,000. We're going to change it for this for $50,000. It's a different thing, because there is a kind of a upfront investment sometimes to get where you want to go, and that benefit's realized over a period of time. And again, I don't know that everybody from a IT perspective, we're used to talking that way, but I think it's a very valid point, especially when we're doing these investments into the platform and the business that we're going to be operating, and the flexibility that we want. You mentioned Kubernetes earlier, and those are the kinds of investments that you want to make with the way that you develop, so that you do have some of that flexibility and some of that movement capability.
Yeah, and I refer a lot of times to Sherpas. If you do a lot of hiking or mountain climbing, you would not even think about taking that adventure without a Sherpa if you're going to climb one of the major mountains. And they're guides that are helping you make sure you're doing the right track, to make sure that you're making the right choices. And I sometimes refer to some of our people. We have an entire VMware practice around CSM, customer success or cloud success managers. And these people really are there as part of the VMware family to help not only understand the pricing and understand the costing, helping make sure you maximize your investment. So there's just so many things that we're doing here at Insight to help our customers be successful. And I think I really appreciate a lot of that. And we've got some great skills we've got so many delivery people that we work with that just blow me away. I'm just dumbfounded sometimes listening to them work with customers, being able to ask questions that I never even thought of. They educate me. I've been around for a long time, but I'm telling you, I learn every day here at Insight.
So to make sure our search engine optimizations go high, we got to talk about generative AI. So,
Absolutely. A buzzword. We just came back from VMware Explore. What's my takeaway from VMware Explore? AI, and more AI. I think that generative AI is the big things with the LLMs, and understanding exactly how we can take these co-pilots that they're talking about to help them. Microsoft is spending a ton of money to help with co-pilots and be able to help maximize their usage and help reduce a lot of that mundane work, or the income. I know Sean's done a lot of research on this as well, so maybe I'll let Sean talk a little bit about some of that generative AI and some of the things that VMware is doing around it.
Well, I appreciate you throwing the hot potato in whatever direction this happens to be. One of our big announcements, VMware, we just concluded the first of multiple Explore events. Now, we used to call them VMworld, and now they're called VMware Explore. The first event, they happen every year. The first event's in the US, and it was the third week in August. We have them in Singapore and Sao Paulo and Barcelona, and there are regional events that are still going to take place that haven't occurred yet. But one of our big announcements, and there were many announcements, so this is just one of many, was a private AI foundation collaboration with NVIDIA. So it's VMware's, there was an ecosystem, like a whole reference architecture for private AI that's bringing that on-prem, because AI right now is, I think most of us know, most of it's in the cloud, if not all of it. So doing something VMware does very well, which is private cloud, using the resources that have been pooled, aggregated, optimized, and delivered on-prem through a VMware-based infrastructure, dedicating those to AI workloads in a way that, in a multi-cloud model, is something that VMware can uniquely do. And when we're teaming with a cutting-edge company with hardware and software like NVIDIA, I mean, it was pretty, I want to say mind-blowing, but that's not right. It was eye-opening to to see NVIDIA's CEO on stage at Explore with our CEO, Raghu, talking about this private AI foundation. It's fascinating, and AI itself is cutting edge. So I think that would be one of the big takeaways from VMware Explore US was that announcement, and VMware's sort of renewed focus on something that is not a lot of people have thought about, which is having your own AI. Because who wants to put all their eggs in one basket, which is putting your data in the cloud? I mean,
and that's huge. That is absolutely huge, Sean. We're doing it here at Insight. We're actually building our own private AI cloud and using it with our own securing it. And I think that's one of the areas that a lot of customers are concerned about, exposing all their data. We have years and years of sales information, be able to search that in large data lakes and be able to put that into LLMs. Security is a number one concern, and we have really kind of started to hit the nail on that. Jason, I know that I'll throw this back again at you for security. You know, when you're talking about generating all this data and protecting it, especially, you know, proprietary information, that's a huge security risk. And, you know, you need to be able to put rails around that, guardrails to help protect it. So maybe you can talk a little bit some of the things that we're doing here at Insight.
Well, thanks. I hadn't planned to talk too much about that, but I always get to. It's one of those things where we really had to do this right. We wanted to embrace the latest technology, and because we were leveraging Microsoft's solution, which is in the cloud, it was one of those things where we couldn't misstep, being who we are and the reputation that we have. So we had to do a lot of due diligence related to that to figure out, you know, where the API endpoints, where the data stayed, the connections into the cloud to leverage the GPT within Azure. And so we had to do all of that due diligence before we went in. We set the appropriate governance in place, put the policies in place. The short of it is we reaped a big benefit from making this available and understanding the security aspects around it. And we were able to share that with our clients. So that was a coup. I think the stuff that Sean just talked about is really, you know, from me being a nerd, you know, helping figure all this AI stuff out for Insight, I totally see the need for, as people want to develop their own LLMs based on their own data, based on doing some really cool stuff that's kind of proprietary, maybe to the way that they do business, you're going to want to, you know, when you want to train that model, you're not going to want to buy all of those resources. You're going to want to lease those and leverage one of the cloud providers for that. But you still want to bring that back in-house to maintain it, because remember, it's basically like a supercomputer that's got to host this thing, depending on how big the model is. And that's the reason that most people want to do that in the cloud, because just the GPT 3.5 was a terabyte file, you know, to basically have. So you'd have to have a machine with a terabyte of RAM and all of the associated, you know, compute around that to process that. Whereas, you know, again, I think this gives a lot of flexibility for organizations, number one, to be able to control stuff that's very proprietary and that potentially they don't ever want to go into the cloud, as well as they can control costs, because now I can leverage my private infrastructure, not just my private infrastructure on the one giant machine that I built, but across the way that we're super good at pooling resources from a VMware perspective, I think is really a good deal. You know, NVIDIA, like you said, is a very strategic partner of ours, and I love their platform. I see the marriage between VMware and NVIDIA. It makes perfect sense. I think that'll be a big success.
And I would just add one more thing for all of you IT professionals out there, is your job is not going away. It's still complex. It's still extremely important for you to have these skills that are here, because I hear that all the time. They're thinking they're going to be replaced. I assure you there still needs to be that highly skilled individual in the background to build that environment, to maintain that environment, to secure that environment. And care and feeding is extremely important. So I just want to make sure that I make that common statement is IT, you are not being replaced with any type of this AI, no matter what it is. There still needs to be that skilled person in the background. So, or
virtualization or infrastructure in general. I think those folks are the key to most organizations. They know how everything works. You can't just rip and replace stuff or shove it over to the cloud and expect everything to be perfect. It's the infrastructure people that are closest to your organization that really understand it the most. So, you know, there was a certain point in time where I think they felt marginalized by the ability for the developers to swipe the credit card, you know, the old adage related to that, and do the shadow IT thing. That's coming way back, especially from a cost perspective, where we're finding out that, yeah, that swipe a credit card thing isn't working out when we're seeing those bills come in every month. Yep. And we're not optimized. We're not even taking advantage of simple efficiencies that we could be if we had this sorted out from an infrastructure perspective. You know, that whole gravity aspect of where am I processing this data? Where does the data need to be? All of those things. How can I leverage my edge more effectively? That comes from the people that are disciplined around what we're talking about. So I don't think those people are going away by any means. I think they need to own their place within the organization and be more strategic. Don't wait for the orders to come in. Tell the folks outside what you can deliver back. And I think understanding how AI works, understanding how the latest technology works is the way to do that. So I'm out here telling you the same thing is you matter so much more than you think. If you're thinking you don't matter to the organization, you really, really do. That infrastructure is hugely important. You really know how the organization works.
I agree.
Well, this has been fun.
Yeah, hopefully we've been able to share some knowledge and ask your questions, reach out to your Insight reps and let us know how we can help you.
Yeah. Sean, any parting words for folks out there?
Oh, I would say it's an exciting time to be in our industry. AI is just the newest thing, but there's always going to be a need for customers or for partners or for software companies or hardware companies for really smart, driven people who are looking to make an impact on the world. You can do it through business, you can do it through philanthropy. There are all different ways to do it, but we live in exciting times. And I know I think it's a Chinese curse, right? May you live in interesting times. But it's tongue in cheek, obviously. But we do live in interesting times, and I think we as professionals need to embrace that. But I do want to say on behalf of me personally and VMware, we really appreciate being invited to have this talk. It's been fun and enlightening both. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Sean Dellinger from VMware, thank you. Pat Thiel from Insight, thank you very much. You guys are awesome. You guys out there for watching us, answering our survey questions, all the things that you do, your comments, we really appreciate those. If you want to know more about what we do here at Insight, visit us at insight.com and of course, VMware.com for what VMware has to offer. Thank you all. Cheers.